Hello and welcome to Records Rebuilds. Believe it or not, it has been over 1 month since our last C8 Z06 video. There has been a lot of information that's come out since then, and at the same time, a lot has stayed the same. So all of the media reviews, the embargo finally ended, all the reviews dropped at once. And I liked listening to all of them, but we just basically found out that everybody else who's driven the car who's not affiliated with GM feels the same way about driving the car that the GM engineers feel, which is really great. But I think we kind of trusted those engineers in the first place. And so I don't know that we know a lot more about the car just yet. So we'll kind of recap the things we know. And then if you stick around to the very end, just a little bit, haven't had any Ciocca news for a very long time, just a little bit of Ciocca allocation news, maybe. If you've been on any of the Corvette forums lately, there is a lot of kind of woe is me, angry, angsty type of a feeling. I'm not really feeling that myself. That's probably why I haven't made so many videos on this topic lately, because I'm kind of just in a I'm okay to wait type of a mode, you know? I just kind of try to forget that I have a deposit on the car and forget that it's ever been announced and forget that it's coming. But there have been a few things that could possibly be considered bad news. Probably, the first of those, or the most prominent, is National Corvette Museum was supposed to have a lead follow C8 Z06 program down on the track at NCM Motorsports Park. And we had people that had that reserved even in November, I think some in late October even, if I'm right. And those have all been canceled and moved to February, maybe earlier than February, but at least right now looking like February. So that just shows you even the Corvette Museum was not able to get the two cars that they were expecting to get in October. So that's where we're at. Production proceeding at a slow rate, but we do know a lot of customer cars have been built out there. Let's see, other things that could be considered negative news. Well, first, some really positive news is that the build and price tool is finally live. I don't know about you, but if you're like me, you've been punching in the numbers into that thing and sort of crying into your pillow each night now that you're able to put all the options together and realize how much they actually cost. But it's really nice to be able to do that. A lot of people asking, why did that take so long? And Harlan Charles at the NCM Hall of Fame induction saying, that program is programmed by people who do that for GM company-wide, and they really have a hard time making those people understand, hey, this is a really special car. People want to be able to spec this car out before they order it, even the very first orders to ever go in. He talked about maybe bringing that program in-house to the Corvette team in the future so that they can have it ready to go in the time frame that Corvette buyers expect. So he also talked about, at that same event, the Hall of Fame induction at NCM Museum, or National Corvette Museum, he talked about how really the contracts with the dealers are almost a century old, many of them, and they don't give them any power at all to police dealers who are charging above MSRP, and how that's pretty unfortunate. Obviously, you've all heard of some pretty crazy things out there. I know of one particular dealer. I can't really verify everything, so I won't list the place or the person, but this particular place has a reputation for a dealer that has been indicted for trying to bribe the state previously, and they're not in the top 100 for Corvette sales, and yet reportedly they've got 4 allocations already for the C8 Z06. They are reportedly selling those at $50,000 above MSRP, which I guess is their right to do. I mean, their contract allows them to do that. Harlan was pretty clear in saying, yeah, we cannot police them at all. The contract does allow them to do that. So I think next thing is like what to look forward to. What comes next for the C8 Z06? Well, I have a confession that I want to make that may make me lose a lot of subscribers. I'm not really sure. But the confession I want to make is I don't really care how the C8 Z06 sounds. I know everybody's in love with that flat plane crank sound, but I really like the way the LS and LT motors sound. I never felt like I needed something better than that. And honestly, I know this is weird, but like the sound of a car was never what really did it for me. I like that feeling where your stomach gets sucked back and it feels like you left it 5 feet behind you. But I don't focus a lot on sound. You know, when I was growing up loving cars, my dad never really focused on sound and we never talked about sound. I think all of you out there who can identify an engine by sound and are just in tune to that, I think that's awesome, but it's never been my thing. So what is gonna make the C8 Z06 worth it for me? Well, for me, a little bit of it is gonna have to do with lap times. You know, we do time trials with the car. The plan is to take it to time trials. So that's one thing. You know, if an expert can do this time with it, what time am I gonna be able to do with it? You know, that's something that's big on my mind for this car. But the other part of it is, you know, growing up, the C5 was a huge leap forward for the Corvette, and all of your friends or all the people you know who are Porsche drivers, they would say, hey, you know, hey, that car can run better times, but the interior sucks. Everybody hates the interior. I would never drive that car personally because of the interior. And then the interior got better on the car, and Chevrolet fixed every little thing that anybody can complain about. And lately, what have we been hearing? We hear the Porsche drivers say, you know, it's the feel of the car. Yeah, sure, that car has better numbers, it gets better lap times, but the feel, you can never replicate the feel that the Porsche gives me. And I feel like that's a little bit like somebody who's like, I don't need medicine. Essential oils are awesome, man. You can't come at me with that science stuff. Car and Driver's lightning lap is going to be coming up. I think just within the next month or so. We should get the results in February or so. So I wanted to take a quick look at what the lightning lap has been like in the past and sort of set the stage for what this is going to be like this year, because I think where the Porsches end up and where the C8 Z06 ends up is going to be something that's really huge and important for me, as far as whether I still want the car at this price point. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so if we're going to go down this whole Car and Driver lightning lap rabbit hole, it's important to recognize the limitations first. So this is a really great article that I'm going to link to down in the comments, and it talks about all the inherent limitations of a magazine car testing. I think it's a bit overstated, because I do think these tests provide some valuable information, but it has a lot of good points about how really none of this testing meets the type of margin of error that we need for like legitimate scientific testing. So that's a strike against everything that I'm going to try to say here, and it's a pretty good point. I think we also need to recognize the fact that if results come back and they say the Corvette gets the better time, but the Porsche is the better car, and we'd rather have the Porsche, but the Corvette is much more cost effective and it's the best bang for your buck, that makes General Motors happy, that makes Porsche happy, that makes Corvette owners happy, that makes Porsche owners happy, that makes journalists happy, and that makes editors happy. And that is probably why virtually every Corvette versus Porsche comparison for the last 30 years has come back with those results. So there's a lot of bias in there. I think it's also really important to note that VIR, where the lightning lap takes place, is probably the closest thing that Corvette engineers have to our Nürburgring. This test is important to General Motors engineers. We know that General Motors sends people with the car to try and coax the best time out of the car for this event. I think the Porsches are really set up, the engineers spend a lot of time tuning those special cars specifically to work at the Nürburgring, whereas that's not a huge focus for Corvette. So I think we're playing on Corvette's home track here, so you have to keep that in mind. Okay, so with those caveats out of the way, I think what all of us are really wanting to know, and what all this testing is really about, is will this car feel fast? Will it feel better than the C7 Z06? So here's an Instagram post that was pointed out over on midenginecorvetteforum.com by Egon that I think really gets at the heart of the matter. It's a conversation between Carlos Lago, the deputy editor over at Car and Driver, and Randy Popes, who is certainly one of the most famous drivers for evaluating these types of cars and has won pretty much everything there is to win in SCCA. So Carlos is talking about the car. Beautiful picture here, by the way. I mean, God, that's a beautiful picture. And Randy says, it looks amazing. I know it revs like crazy, but do you miss the torque increase? It's got to be nice to be normally aspirated. I am reminded of the GT3 and GT2. When I go from the 2 and hop in a 3, I miss the 200 pound-feet of torque. Revs are cool, but torque is what we feel pressing back into the seat. Do you feel like, as great as the revs are, it really should have more torque? And that's what we're all wondering, and I think that's what lap times are an imperfect measurement of. It's really heartening to see that Carlos wrote on here, honestly, there's so much power that I'm not missing torque. It's more car than I am driver. If you're not familiar with Car and Driver's Lightning Lap, it's an event the magazine puts on every October at Virginia International Raceway. They use a slightly different configuration, so it's pretty hard to compare to other VIR lap times, but for all its imperfections, and it's journalists doing the driving instead of top racers or anything like that. For all its imperfections, it is probably the largest database of lap times by a wide range of cars that we have. So what happened the last time that a new Z06 went to the Lightning Lap? Well, something pretty amazing. The 2015 Z06, the C7 Z06, debuted with a lap time of 244.6, which was very impressive. As you can see, the 2020 GT500 is just the same exact time as that. So a very impressive thing. And not only did it outperform previous Corvettes, but the Porsches that came after were really unable to match that lap time. You've got the 2016 GT3 RS, the 2018 GT3, and the 2017 911 Turbo S, with times just right in the same range here that just couldn't match what the C7 Z06 was putting down. Now, there are differences between weather between years. There are a lot of variables that could favor this. And of course, I'm a Corvette homer, so I love Lightning Lap. But the GT2 RS still the champ, even able to beat the mighty Corvette ZR1 in 2019. So, I can't gloat too much. But what do we want to see out of this new C8 Z06? Well, I'm not going to be able to drive this car before I buy it. So it's really important for me to be able to decide, is this car going to feel like a step forward from the 2015 Z06? I think that it is, and I think it will be able to beat this 244.6 lap time. But if it doesn't, we love the flat plane crank and the sound, but as I told you, I'm not really a sound guy. I'm more about feeling like that car lets you leave your stomach 5 feet behind you, and that's about torque. And I think some of us are a little bit worried about this car maybe not having enough torque. Now, it should be there because the gearing is different. It's going to get its torque from gearing rather than from a lot of low-end grunt like the previous engines had. But it's still a concern. So for me, a flat plane crank C8 Z06 that does not beat the C7 Z06, that's an $80,000 car. But if you want, $100,000, which is what they're charging for the C8 Z06, it needs to be able to beat the C7 Z06. And it would be really awesome if it would compete with these new Porsches up here. Of course, the GT4 RS, the Cayman, is going to be added, somewhere in here this next year. We expect that testing to be, a direct comparison to the C8 Z06. I don't need it to be able to spank the Porsches like it did last time. Sorry, if you can't tell, I'm a bit of a Corvette homer. But I don't need it to be able to embarrass the Porsches like it did last time around. It does not have forced induction. It doesn't have that supercharger. It probably cannot beat these cars, these Porsches here. If it does, it's going to be an all-time legend. I mean, it'll be one of the great cars in automotive history if it can put down better times than these modern Porsches. But even if it doesn't, I really, I need it to be able to get close to these Porsches, and I need it to be able to beat the C7 Z06. And if it can beat the C7 Z06, it will be close to these Porsche times. It'll be right up in there. But boy, there's a real opportunity if it can beat those Porsches to be just a car that we see as legendary. Okay, so as promised, we do have just a little smidge of Ciocca information to discuss. Of course, my reservation for the Z06 is with Ciocca Chevrolet out in New Jersey. And I know a lot of you have reservations there as well. It's the biggest Corvette dealer in the country. And so, of course, we're always kind of jonesing for any information we can get about their list. How fast is it moving? How's it going? And intermittently, they have posted information about how their C8 Z06 orders are proceeding. And then a lot of times we've seen that information taken down afterwards. And we think that's because a lot of the allocations they have right now at this point in time came through a special program, special option you could select that would let you pick your VIN number. So if you wanted a VIN number that was close to your anniversary date or something like that, that's what it's always been used for in the past. But it appears a lot of customers used it to select a very early VIN number this time around because the car was so in demand. And it appears those are separate from the normal allocation process. It looks like Ciocca, we're seeing maybe they got like 3 orders in the normal allocation process, and we think only those 3 orders are going to count towards the list that we are all on. The select your own VIN option, that was a separate thing. So I think that's why that information keeps getting pulled down. But we'll talk about what information was put up there, just so, I mean, we all want to know anything we can. And basically, it's good to know that some people are getting their cars, whoever they are. And, I'm happy for Ciocca to be selling the cars. So, first, they've got 18 cars at 3,000 status. So that really doesn't hardly mean anything. A car can sit at 3,000 status for a very long time. In the case of these cars where you could select your own VIN, let's say you wanted car number 3,500, it would sit at 3,000 status all the way until car number 3,500 gets produced, and then they would bring it up and the order would proceed from there when it was time for that order to proceed. But they've also got 10 cars at 3,100 status. 3,100 status is when the car is becoming more finalized. You start to get a TPW date, target production week, and that week gets a lot more accurate at 3,100 status. So it's just kind of the first step towards production. They have 4 cars at 3,300 status. So 3,300 status is when the car is scheduled for production. Should have a very accurate, pretty much rock solid target production week date by that point in time. They've got 3 cars at 3,400 status. 3,400 status is when the order is at the plant, they're starting to pull parts to build the car, and then they have 7 cars at 3,800 status. So those are cars that have actually already been built and are now probably awaiting the quality control hold from Chevrolet. So that's good news. I mean, at least, there's 7 cars out there that are going to be coming to somebody within the next 30 to 90 days, So we're all pretty excited about that. Unfortunately, like I said, that probably doesn't mean much for the Ciocca list. Maybe we've moved up 3 spots that we don't know about yet on the list. Time will tell. Just be patient. Pretend like you don't have an order for the car, other than don't spend that money that you're going to be using for it. And just be patient. Good things come to those who wait. And the thing I'm really excited about right now that is going to happen before I get my car is the Car and Driver Lightning Lap. I think if the car is able to beat the C7 Z06, which I think it will. I think there's no chance it doesn't outperform the C7 Z06. It will be a wonderful car. It will be the best Z06 ever. But if it somehow manages to outperform that GT4 RS and even the GT3, then wow, I mean, this is going to be a legendary car, one for the ages, perhaps the last best naturally aspirated Corvette in history, which is something really to look forward to. So yeah, I think that's a positive note, guys. We'll see you next time.